I don't know if I can do that from here. Maybe Will can.
I can
I'm
try
gonna.
doing.
Okay.
I'm going to start the forum, as it were. So thank you all for being here. For those of you joining us on the live streams, most of them exist now, and the ones that don't will be existing in a moment. My name is Patrick Nelson. I'm running for the New York State Senate in the 43rd District, which includes the eastern part of Saratoga County, the itty bitty southernmost tip of Washington County, the towns of Easton and Cambridge, most of the county of Rensselaer, with the exception of the city of Rensselaer and downtown Troy and South Troy. But we do have Lansingburg and the Freer Park community in the city of Troy, and all of Columbia County, Hudson, Kinderhook, Stuyvesant, Ghent, Claverick, and all other places in between. So I want to thank you all for joining us here tonight for a little town hall meeting. We'll have some question and answer. Really simple ground rules. You can use the raise hand feature, or if you have your video on, you can literally just like raise your hand or post something in the chat. You'll have the floor. Say what you want to say, outline an issue, ask a question, tell me something I don't know, which the list of things is very, very long. I will try to respond to it as best I can. You'll have an opportunity for a follow up. I'll try to respond to that, and you'll have the last word on any issue. And then we'll move it on, and we'll go for as long as everybody has the energy to, and we still have interest in folks being here. If you are watching on any of the streaming services, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, we do have staff monitoring that. You could put a little question in the comments, and we'll try to respond to that as well. So with that, yeah. So my name is Patrick Nelson. I'm from Stillwater, New York. I'm a village trustee. I am a member of the New York State Democratic Committee. I've been a campaign organizer and worked in public service for about the last 6 years. I worked in the New York State Assembly, and I've worked on a lot of election campaigns, from city council, town board, to president of the United States, and a lot of places in between. And I'm running for the state Senate because we need production from our representation. We need a representative that can provide results for our community, that I can actually introduce and see legislation through the process that benefits our community. And we're not getting that kind of representation now. We also need representation that recognizes that I don't expect everybody to agree with me, and I don't expect to agree with everybody, but we have to find ways to work together and generate results, and realize that it's going to be my job to represent everybody, almost 300,000 people in this district, whether they agree with me or not, whether they share my political viewpoint or my worldview. It's my job to work for everybody, just not those who agree with me. And we also don't have a representative that believes in doing that part of the job either, who spends more time calling names and pandering to a very specific base, rather than reaching out, building coalitions, and creating the partnerships necessary to be the most effective senator. I mentioned this earlier today. I was talking to somebody. I'm on the village board in Stillwater. I'm the only member of my village board that hasn't endorsed Elise Stefanik, as sad as that is, who's someone that I obviously won't be supporting, and I think has done an awful job as our congressional representative. That being said, I can't do my job for my constituents in the village if I rest on that and write people off and don't find ways to find some other common ground. We still have budgets to pass. We still have streets to pave. We have water and sewer systems to maintain. We have recreation to provide. And I can't do my job if I don't find ways to build bridges, find ways to have conversations with folks that I don't 100% agree with. I've had to do it within my own Democratic Party. So that's the skill set that I'm going to bring. That's the disposition that I'm going to bring to the state Senate, and it's going to be based on production, delivering results, getting funding for our local projects, getting funding for our schools, passing legislation that helps our community, making sure that we're represented at the table. And with that, anyone's welcome to raise their hand and ask a question. And if nobody has any questions, I'll just, go get some dinner. And Schaefer, thank you for joining us. I will unmute you now. Actually, is Joanna going to run that? Joanna's going to run the muting. I'm not going to do any of the muting.
All right, authorized to speak. I love it. Living in Saratoga Springs, I've obviously seen a lot of Paul Tonko and a lot of Kerry Warner.
Yep.
I'm a little concerned that I'm not seeing a lot of Patrick Nelson plastered across people's lawns, things like that. I get I get the feeling that our local committee is not doing as much as they should or could. I was just wondering, is that the case? Do you need some help there? Not anything against you, Joanna. I've worked with these people. Patrick has seen me work with these people.
Mhm.
So that's my question. What do you do here in Saratoga Springs?
So some of this is deliberate to the kind of the strategy and the way we've shifted our focus through the campaign. I'm not going to say anything. I think the Saratoga Springs committee is doing a good job. Dylan Moran, by the way, is taking care of passing out signs. So anybody that wants to get signs can reach out to him. He's got about 50 of them. I dropped them off last week. So we're going to send everybody in that direction in terms of yard signs. We would like folks to get involved in our phone banking program. I think it'll get better. We are working on having coordination up and down the ballot that'll make it easier for everybody to work with all of the campaigns. But I will say, like, some of this is it's on me. I'm from Saratoga County. I am the state committee member representing Saratoga Springs. And I deliberately chose to focus in the rollout of our campaign and getting to know folks in Columbia County and getting to know all the committees and the communities in Rensselaer County. So we've been having a lot of those conversations of late because those are places where folks don't know me from anybody else. So we've made a concerted effort to connect into those communities. And now, with 55 days left to go, we feel confident and comfortable with those relationships, and we are going to spend a heck of a lot more time focusing on Saratoga County. So it's not that it's a lower priority. In fact, it's where we're going to finish. But I wanted to spend some time in some other places. And Schaefer, absolutely. Any help that you can provide, you can reach out to Joanna. She's joanna@nelsonfornewyork.com, or me directly. You have my phone number, so feel free to call sometime. But yeah, we need folks to absolutely get involved. Saratoga County is key to our success in this election, and it's going to be getting a lot of focus over the next 55 days. So thank you, and thank you for being here. Anything on policy, any concerns beyond that, or just a campaign question? All right, thank you, Schaefer. So Dan, Catherine, Paula, Linda, June. Don't all jump at once. All right, Linda's got something. Gonna have to unmute her.
You should have gotten a notification asking you to unmute.
Yeah, you have to. We can't force the unmute. You've got to click a. Oh shoot! Looks like we're having some technical difficulties. We had some of that earlier today too. Took 3 times to get through a video call with a member of the assembly.
All right.
Linda, welcome back.
Well, thank you so much. Okay, so I don't know that I want an answer to all this, but I want to be heard. And first of all, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
And as a Christian, I refuse to be a member of either one of those clubs.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to point out that before last year, in New York State, we were 1 vote away from healthcare coverage from all New Yorkers. Lo and behold, the Democrats win everything. They've got the governorship, they've got the Senate, they've got the Assembly. Isn't it amazing we didn't get healthcare that year in New York? Now, surprisingly enough, the same thing happened in California. The whole insurance issue didn't even make it out of committee. And I am sick and tired of this kind of game playing. One of the reasons we don't have national health care is because of people like Chuck Schumer taking all kinds of money from the healthcare industry. The Democrats are as much to blame about this as the Republicans are. And I really feel like they have absolutely sold their base down the river. I think Chris Hedges is right on when he describes this. And so I guess what I'm saying is how are you going to be any different? What am I going to expect? I mean, I have said to Kerry Warner on more than one occasion, When both my husband and I retire, we have to leave New York State because we can't afford to live here. We can't afford to pay for health care for everybody else and not have it for ourselves. And I point out to my state worker and government worker friends, I am not asking for anything more than I'm already paying for you to have. I just want what I pay for everyone else to get. And then I get this song and dance about, well, the unions have this and we don't want to give up that. Well, you know, I'm sitting here with a $10,000 deductible. And I have to listen to people complain about, well, I may have to pay a copay. And I really feel like the Democratic Party has abandoned me, absolutely abandoned me. So that's where I am.
I hear you. I'm going to try to do this in a way that doesn't speak ill of anybody in particular, especially people that I hope to have to work with next year. But I can say that there's a contingent. There were a number of members of the New York State Senate currently that actually ran on a Medicare for All proposal in the New York Health Act, and then upon taking a seat in the state Senate, refused to actually co-sponsor it. In fact, we were one vote away 2 years ago, and here we are again with 31 co-sponsors in the New York State Senate, 32 being a majority. So it's almost like we're back right where we were before, and we didn't even take the majority. I will say there's been.
And I want it made clear that's by design.
I'm a member of the New York State Democratic Committee. Yeah, it's by design. That's the way the power is structured. You're not wrong about the influence of money. It's also sometimes legislators that are a little bit courage challenged in terms of wanting to push large reforms because those reforms didn't exist and they fear backlash. So, but that's one of the benefits of this campaign, our campaign. I've been a fighter for Medicare for All for at least the last 4 years. I'm on record on it multiple times. It's on our website. And it's not that you're not just fighting for what you're already paying for. You're paying for it 2 times over. We're all paying for it 2 times over. We are paying for, in this country, 2 universal healthcare systems without the benefit of one. And we pay higher taxes in the United States and in New York that go towards healthcare than most other developed countries do, and they have universal systems. It's a highway robbery. And I understand that people want to hold on to their issues. I mean, I had an interview with CSEA. They're concerned about out-of-state retirees having healthcare. I think that's an important issue that we should address. But it's one of the big reasons why I'm running. And one of the benefits in our race is that this is a marginal seat. This is a purple seat. There's about just barely 900 more Democrats than Republicans, so it's by no means safe. And if we're able to win this election from a marginal seat, it takes away some of the arguments from some of the other members that go, well, shoot, my seat's really purple. If we go, quote, too far left, end quote, I might lose my seat. I've got the ability to answer back, well, I campaigned on these issues, and if we don't put these reforms forward, I run the risk of losing my seat. So it's a counterbalance to some of the other marginal members in the state who have, if you spend time around the legislature, you know that it is those members that make the majority possible that have an outsized influence in the direction of that majority. So I would be one of those voices. So we're not talking about a safe Brooklyn seat or something from Queens or Manhattan. The majority leader is going to have to listen more to what I have to say because I'll be one of the reasons why she is majority leader and she has a chance to remain in that position. If in terms of the healthcare issue, I think I've proven myself a supporter for that. I was a delegate for Bernie Sanders, not once, but twice, worked on his campaign. Medicare for All is probably one of the single more important issues for me as somebody with a pre-existing condition, as someone that's dealt with the healthcare system, as someone that's seen the impact that this has on our small businesses. Linda, if I could tell you a story, and this is a story I'm going to tell because I want to tell it more often. And that's I had a stint in my life where I was an entrepreneur. I was working in nanobiotechnology. We were trying to develop a new generation of gene therapies to deal with things like cystic fibrosis, sickle cell anemia, osteogenesis imperfecta, some of these low-hanging fruit genetic disorders that are really, by the way, a single letter out of place in the genetic code.
Mhm.
Right, that's what causes those mutations. So it's quite possible that those are things that. So this is the area in the space that we were working on. I was with a friend of mine. Who was in the company with me. We're at our house. We're out in California playing a game of chess, actually, and talking over some of the business stuff. And he falls into a grand mal seizure on the floor. We haven't been in California a month. Nobody's got insurance in state, let alone him. And I'm sitting there going through this disgustingly uniquely American calculation of at what point do I call the ambulance versus how much is this going to cost? You shouldn't have to make that. My friend is in jeopardy. I should make the call. I shouldn't have to worry about how much it's going to cost. We're talking about potentially a life or death emergency. Eventually, a few minutes go by and screw it. I make the phone call. He finally wakes up when we get to the ER. And it's a $5,000 bill on a company that had just raised $40,000. It's stories like this, having spent some time in Silicon Valley and spent some time in tech communities in New York City in a previous life, that keep people from starting businesses, that keep people from pursuing certain passions. And we all lose when folks are locked in their current jobs, or when folks do try to take a risk and create something and ultimately lose out because of a medical concern. So I think that it's also a way for us to lower our property taxes, believe it or not. And I could go into the specifics onto that as well, but
I am aware.
I hope you will believe my sincerity. All I can do is ask you to trust me. But this is being recorded. This is going out to the internet. I'm on the record saying that I'm going to support it. I do think there are things in that bill that need to be improved before it becomes law. You think about it, it's a 33-page bill. Like Bernie Sanders' proposal is 200 pages. So there are definitely things that go unaddressed. Couple of quick things. I think that there should be a role for the controller in managing the New York Health Fund in that proposal. And rather than being a part of the governor's office, we have the benefit of this multi-part executive branch in the state of New York, and we should distribute some of the power from the system to different areas. I'd also like to see us do a little bit more work in the legislature of spelling out exactly what the tax structure looks like, because currently it's sort of like kicks the can to the second floor and says, hey, figure out what the taxes will need to be for this. And I think we should do more of the work in the legislature to make that happen, so that we put in the law and ensure that, while the Friedman study says 98% of New Yorkers will save money under this, and the Rand Corporation study backs that up, they have to make certain assumptions about what the tax structure will look like, because the bill doesn't spell those out. And this is part of the reason why I want to be on the health committee, is because I want to do this work. And you have to remember that when it comes to doing a Medicare for All system, as a country, we get one shot at this. To actually implement one, it has to work. Because if it does not work, we're not going to be able to get a system like this passed in the rest of the country. So there's a gravity of that sort of undertaking and the work that needs to be done there. And I'm committed to guaranteeing healthcare as a right to every New Yorker, and doing the hard work necessary to make sure that when we put it in the law, it works. So.
Thank you.
Did you want to follow up on that?
No, I appreciate it. I think where I have the problem is the politicking that you describe, the difference between a purple seat and somebody has to listen to you. How about we come from a values base? We'll do what's right for the people. I'm just tired of the other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm welcome to the state of New York. The politics is a mess. I know here's the thing is I know what I'm getting into.
I'm talking about you can make the same analogy with New York, but for me, the Democratic Party is that way as well, which is why I left years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, I joined up because I wanted to make improvements to it. But it's been a fight. I'm not afraid to go against my own party. I've done it many, many times. I'll do it again. I care about what's in the best interest of people. I think more often than not, that's aligning with the Democratic Party, but certainly not 100%.
Okay.
Couldn't be 100%, right? You can't expect a political party to be 100% right about everything. I can't expect a human being to be 100%. I'm certainly not.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying that. I'm just talking about values-based, what's right for the people.
Yep.
And versus becoming the corporate donor party, so they've been
Yeah.
whoring after the wealthy and corporate donors and forgotten what their base is.
Yep. Which is supposed to be working people. It's supposed to be the labor movement.
Yep.
And that's certainly where I'm working to help folks. Now we had another question here. I think, oops,
Thank you.
there I go, pushing the wrong button. Yeah, Paula has a good question here about. Okay, you got two questions. Actually, can we unmute Paula if you'd like to speak and say it out loud so that our viewers at home, as it were, can hear it?
Hi, sorry, I'm not on video.
No
I
problem.
have two other Zoom calls going on in my house at the same time, so I'm trying to save some bandwidth. But
How do
one
we
question,
just love COVID?
yes.
Hi, welcome to my life. I sit at this desk and I go on Zoom calls all day.
Yes.
Go ahead, Paula.
So one question was whether or not the unemployment situation related to coronavirus will open more people's minds to be receptive to Medicare for all, to understand why you can't have your insurance tied to your job. And then
I think this is a great point.
Yeah, and it just seems like now is the time that maybe people could appreciate that and would be, willing of all the times in our recent history to say, yes, this is a good idea. And also maybe even, get crazy and think about universal basic income. And then the other question was just, the budget situation is going to be bad, that we're already talking about 20% cut to all the school districts. And what's that going to look like by January? And then do people say, oh, we can't afford Medicare for all because we don't even have money to fund schools? So how does all of that stuff wrap in with the budget?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Good questions. I mean, millions of Americans have lost their health insurance during a global pandemic because of our current healthcare system. And that's a great point. Like, that's the way you said it is, it wouldn't make much of an improvement. I think that's a great argument. I am certainly a supporter of a UBI system. It was one of the reasons why I was a donor to Andrew Yang's campaign. I don't think a state of New York has the resources to make something like that happen, but I think it's definitely something we need to, should be on the table. It fits sort of my philosophy that government should do simple things that are universally applied, and where we get into trouble is when we try to do this little thing over there, that little thing over here, fill this little gap, and you try to do this sort of Ivy League, narrowly targeted policy solutions, as if you can just take one specific area, change something, and there's not downstream ramifications in 5 or 6 other areas of the economy or society. Like, things are interconnected. So when you try to pull one lever in one place, it has unforeseen consequences, which is why things like Social Security, everybody pays in, everybody benefits from. Medicare, everybody pays in, everybody benefits from. Public education, everybody pays in, everybody benefits, are more effective because they're universal, and also more politically durable. Because everybody is a beneficiary, there's an incentive to preserve it, right? The Republicans, if they were honest, would say they want to destroy Social Security, but they can't tell the public that because the public wants to protect it. And that's one of the big reasons why a Medicare for all system is more durable and more effective, is because it's something that's universally supportive. And so it's not seen like, oh, I'm paying for somebody else. No, you're paying for yourself, and we're helping you lower your own price. And the reason you're getting a lower price is because we're negotiating together. It's like a Groupon on healthcare. And to take it all the way back to the state budget, right? Yeah, we're seeing this 20% cut. By the way, we're seeing a 20% cut. This is really, really important. Unilaterally enacted by the governor. These were powers that were ceded to the governor by the legislature to make these kind of cuts. It's something that when it happened, I said it was a terrible idea. It's not something I would have supported in the state Senate. If there's going to be budget changes, the legislature should be in Albany right now making this decision and advocating on behalf of their constituents. But because we have courage challenged legislators and a governor that is seen as popular, they'd rather he make the unpopular decision. But frankly, we shouldn't be cutting education funding at all. Right? This is the problem, and this is why this is dangerous for the economy, is that 20% is more than 20% because those teachers and those staff members that were going to lose their jobs support local businesses, support our communities. Every dollar that's spent circulates multiple times. So you're taking a recession, and by making these cuts right now, you are deepening that recession. You're making the economic crisis worse, and you're making your eventual budget shortfall bigger. You're actually cutting your own take in the long run because you're going to have lower income, which means you're going to generate less money with the income tax. This is why austerity doesn't work. Universally applied, any country that applies austerity winds up with deeper budget deficits and more debt than countries that don't apply an austerity system. It is a universally failed economic policy that has failed just about every time it's ever been tried. And the few times that it's been successful have had many other factors for why their economy didn't do damage, right? Think about Greece, for example. All the austerity and all the budget cuts that Greece has been doing, their national debt goes up, not down. It's neither penny wise nor pound foolish, and that's the damage that we're going to have in this situation. We faced a similar conversation that we had on the village board. Luckily, in the village of Stillwater, we have a fund balance. We have a good rainy day fund. So we chose, and I advocated for us tapping into that because, well, a global pandemic and a recession sounds like a rainy day to me. But also that if we were to cut projects, not do the street repairs that we have in place, not do the infrastructure investments, those are jobs that would have been lost in the community. And ultimately that would have been less sales tax that we would have been collecting because those people wouldn't be spending the sales tax. So these things are cyclical. And you have to bear in mind. So what's being done right now is very dangerous. What we need to do and what works and what New York has done in the past, going back to Governor Roosevelt, Governor Rockefeller, Governor David Patterson, is in an economic downturn. We turn to the 118 billionaires in this state. We turn to Wall Street. We turn to the people that are doing phenomenally well. We ask them to pay just a little bit more that they're not going to miss, let's be honest. And we use that to fund basic social services and keep the government afloat. And that's how we get out of economic crises. So I used to work in the assembly for Phil Steck, who's my old boss. He's supporting our campaign. He has a bill to restore the stock transfer tax, which I've often referred to as the stock transfer tax as the stupidest thing in New York State government. And if you're familiar with New York State government, that's saying something. But we had the stock transfer tax from the early 1900s to about 1981. And what this is at its highest point, is like a 0.025% tax on the sale of stocks and bonds. This generates about $15 billion in revenue to the state of New York. And since 1981, we have refunded 100% of it back to the Wall Street trading firms. We could simply stop refunding it. And right now we're sitting on a budget gap of roughly $14 billion this year, $16 billion next year. I think if I have that right. So 2 years of the stock transfer tax, $30 billion. We've just balanced the budget. And here's the fun part, is we talk about the fact that, and the governor's right about this, Washington, D.C. should be supporting New York State right now. Absolutely. We bail out Kentucky and Mississippi and Alabama and Florida and Texas every year as we send more money to Washington than we get back in services from the federal government. So we're not asking for a bailout. We're simply asking for some of the money we've used to bail out other states back for our current crisis. But the cool thing about the stock transfer tax is the vast majority of the people that will pay this tax aren't New Yorkers. So it's a way for us to sort of backdoor and get the rest of the country to support New York by using the fact that we are the financial capital of the world. It's the same thing Alaska does with the royal tax. They're able to export a bunch of their tax burden to the rest of the country. We can do the same thing with the stock transfer tax. And there are other proposals, expanded millionaires tax, pied-à-terre tax, things of that nature. However, those still have to be negotiated. They still need to have an infrastructure put in place. They will take time. The benefit of the stock transfer tax is that it exists, it's on the books, and it is currently collected right now. We simply have to flip a switch from refund to divert into the general fund, and we're able to collect those revenues. So in a short-term cash strap situation, that's the best place, in my estimation, that we can find the necessary revenue to make up for the lost school aid, the lost aid to municipalities, because again, all of these cuts are going to compound in slowing the economic recovery. So that's a long-winded way of going around your questions there, Paula, but I hope that wasn't too meandering, and I hope I addressed your concerns. You want to unmute Paula and see if she has oh, I'm seeing excellent in the chat. Well, thank you. All right, let's go to, I guess we'll go to Catherine next. She has a question about Saratoga County, Saratoga Springs loss of tourism.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Wow, it's working. I wasn't sure this worked. Anyway, yeah, I typed most of the questions. So I wasn't sure my microphone worked, but I know in the past they've looked at looking at the way condos are taxed in this area. And I think the last attempt made, to let municipalities decide for themselves how to tax it was back in 2012 or 10 or something like that. And I was just thinking, with the with the current situation with Saratoga Springs and Saratoga County in general, having lost so much revenue that they depend on from the lack of tourism, would this be except a time that maybe this could get some traction? Because since then it's just gotten worse. I mean, there's zillions. All they build here is condos. I think the majority of them are empty, but the people that do buy them, they're paying a lot less in taxes than I am with my old creaky falling apart house. And it's just, I just think there's a lot of money there that we could be getting for our area that we're just letting slip away.
So, I mean, Schaefer did put this in the chat, and I think he's correct. I mean, we are dealing with a local government issue there in terms of how that's decided at the city level. So it's not something like I'd be able to introduce legislation on. I do believe as a local elected official that we need to make the tax code like fair and assessments fair to all members. And I'm really, really, one of my concerns about property taxes is that they're fundamentally regressive. Like I'm not a big fan of property taxes, like as a concept, because when we raise property taxes and people are on fixed income, they're retiring, they're on Social Security, like that retirement doesn't go up. So when the property tax goes up, we're necessarily hitting those folks harder. And it hits the folks the hardest that are least able to pay it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I'm saying is I hear you. In my capacity as a trustee, it's something that I do think about, and I'm very concerned about raising taxes. What I can say as a future member of the legislature is that we need to be doing things about expanding aid and incentives to municipalities. So this is what's called AIM funding. It has remained flat for the last 12 years, has not been raised at all. And so, of course, with inflation, it's been fundamentally cut by 2 to 3% every year over year over year. So local governments are being asked to do more with less assistance from the state government. And the state always loves to tell local governments what they have to do, and then we don't provide them with the assistance to actually to do that. So, I want to see us expand aid and incentive in municipalities. I want to see us develop a program, which my old boss, Phil, when I used to work in the assembly, worked on a bill called the SWAP program, which is called Sewer Water Assistance Program. And this is a per capita allotment for every community to support their water and sewer infrastructure. So as opposed to being a grant you have to apply for and you may or may not get, it's a basic support payment that goes to every community in the state. So there's less overhead. And that's a means of being able to free up local governments to lower property taxes because they're getting more assistance from the state. It's also one of the reasons actually to go to Linda's point about supporting a Medicare for All system is if we're able to alleviate the healthcare burden on local governments, on county governments, on city governments, both for their employees, but also the fact that 50% of Medicaid is paid for by the counties. In Saratoga County, the majority of your property taxes that you pay to the county, I believe this is correct, are going into the Medicaid program. Imagine if we were able to take that burden away, we centralized it in Albany, and because we're using the negotiating power of a single payer system, we're reducing that overall healthcare costs. We'll be able to free up more than 50% of the property tax revenue that's being collected by the county, which is also your taxes, to go into things that local governments are supposed to be able to do. Yeah, Catherine. That healthcare burden on local governments is a hard thing to overstate. Just to think about the village of Stillwater for a second, we're paying a catastrophic plan upwards of $60,000 for our employees, and then we pay the deductible. So like the last 2 years, we haven't actually dipped into the insurance that we're paying, and we have an annual budget about $1.5 million, and close to 100,000 of that is going to healthcare. Like it's a huge burden, and we're not paying into the Medicaid. But certainly that cost is coming away from monies that we could otherwise be getting from Saratoga County to deal with local projects. So yeah, these are some of the things that we can work on at the state level to create the capacity for local governments to lower the property tax burden. Now, of course, we can't decide what every county and local government is going to do with that capacity, but you can, because you have the influence over your local elected officials to demand it and to go to the ballot box. And frankly, as a state senator, if we free up the capacity for local governments to make a sizable cut in property taxes, and we've got communities in the 43rd district that aren't doing it for some reason, and they can, you can expect me to show up in that community and campaign for candidates that will deliver those savings to their community. So that's one of the things that I'd be able to do in that capacity. So thank you for your question, Catherine. And yeah, I so Will says we've got a question from Erin Trombley.
She said, is there a way to disconnect school funding from taxes to create more equity as a side effect of the pandemic? I know that's a way in left field pipe dream.
No, it's not. I mean, so this is one of those situations where if you could build it from the ground up, you would build it differently. Like one of the problems in the way we structure education in the state and in this country is that we base it off of local property taxes. That is a fundamental flaw in the way the system is designed. The challenge is you can't go next year and just say we're going to go to a completely different model and not cause a whole lot of disruption and chaos to the way things are run and the way things operate. But I do believe that we should be moving, in a direction where we have more of a pure pupil funding. I mean, we have the largest gap in the state of New York between funding for wealthy schools and funding for poorer schools, if any country or if any state in the country. We also have the most racially segregated school system in the entire country. New York State, not Alabama, not Mississippi, New York State. And these two things are connected. I mean, that's why like the 20% cut in state aid isn't going to hammer Shenendehowa as bad as it's going to hurt Schenectady. But it's education's supposed to be this great equalizer, right? It's supposed to be one of those situations where we talk about equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome, but everybody's supposed to have that equal opportunity. But it's by a factor of 3, the amount spent per student between a Shenendehowa, Niskayuna, and a Schenectady High. And that's not equality of opportunity for those students. And it's a way in which the education system, rather than being a check against rising inequality, becomes a means of instituting and cementing that inequality. So I think it's a great question, Aaron, and it's something we've got to put some work into figuring out how we rectify it. And I recognize the fundamental flaw. But the challenge of attacking that at a fundamental level in a way that doesn't cause a disruption, because I mean, think about the lives of the kids getting disrupted right now in the pandemic, right? That is a lifelong change in the way in which folks have grown up. And we want to avoid doing any more of that. So we have to come up with a way. And I haven't completely thought of one yet, but we should work together. And I'm going to work with folks. I'm going to work with teachers and work with parents, work with students to try to figure out a way to make that disconnection. And we do have an opportunity here with some of the stuff that's up in the air to find a way to do some of that. But I don't think it's something that you could just flip a switch on. So, and we've got Dan Mussman has a question. I'll get him a chance to read it out so that the folks at home can hear it.
Hi, guys. Apologies for the lack of video, also a bandwidth issue. I guess it's more of a campaign question really than policy. I was just curious if there were any plans or opportunity to debate your opponent.
Hey, that's a great question.
I just think it would, be a tremendous opportunity to bring the policies, the things you're talking about here to a larger audience.
Absolutely. So right now we would love to. I have proposed 4 debates, 1 per county in the district. We've reached out to the League of Women Voters in Saratoga and Rensselaer County, the Chambers of Commerce in Columbia and Washington. Currently, our opponent is ducking these forms of outreach. In fact, if you go to our Facebook page right now, we have a petition up to ask Do Nothing Daphne to quit ducking debates. And there's a really I love the duck icon. It's a very shady look, incredulous looking duck.
I just put it in the chat.
It's now in the chat, the petition. So please sign the petition. We want to get as many signatures as possible and then try and get the press to write about it or just hand it over to the senator. But we think it's absolutely unacceptable for folks to avoid showing up at a debate. Even if it's going to be like this on Zoom, we should have an opportunity to discuss my plans for the future and the lack of record of my opponent. If she were really proud of the quote results she delivered, she wouldn't be afraid of sitting before the League of Women Voters talking about it. But the point is, she knows she's the least productive senator in this district's history, and she doesn't want to be in a position where she has to answer for it. So we'd like to make a change to that. But either way, either she shows up at a debate and we get a chance to talk about it, or we have to make sure folks know that she's choosing not to, and we have to make sure that politicians who disrespect the voters in this way pay a price, pay an electoral consequence, or else you'll see more politicians do the same thing. Jim Tedisco's doing the same thing in the 49th district. Thinks he's above it. Too good to debate his opponent. And that's just a real slap in the face to the 300,000 people you're asking to support you for re-election.
Wow.
So, yeah. Any more? We got a little more time. I mean, the time is y'all's. It's your time. We've got Kevin. Anything? Nicole? Linda has something again.
Unmute. I have to unmute.
There
Am
it
I
is.
Yeah, you're already
You are on.
unmuted.
No, I just thank you. I just wanted to say I appreciate your command of the issues. I've been impressed as I've listened to you, so I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
So we're trying. By all means, do I not have everything all figured out? But
No,
I'm
and I
trying.
appreciate you saying that. But coming from an old gadfly and curmudgeon, it sounds good.
Well, thank you very much.
Welcome.
So I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to feel heard. Okay. All right. Well, then, I guess we'll say thank you for joining us this evening. We're going to try and do this. Joan, are we doing this every Wednesday now?
Every other Wednesday.
Every other Wednesday.
Every other Wednesday.
All right.
So we'll be doing these every other Wednesday from now until the election, and maybe we'll be doing them more often as we get closer and closer to the election, or keep an eye out. We're going to be trying to do some in-person events. I'll let y'all know we are planning on doing a biking tour of the district as a way of doing some socially distancing outreach. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any ideas of any events or farmers markets or community folk things that we should stop into in your community. So something that we're trying to figure out as well. And yes, Joanna put the lawn sign link in there. Please sign up for lawn signs. There's only 500, so they'll go quick.
I'm calling Dylan. I'm calling Dylan Moran tonight. I'm sending him a text. I want a lawn sign.
Yes, please. Thank you. And keep an eye on them. Somebody stole my Biden signs.
God damn.
I'm not kidding. They left everything else. They left the Tonko, Warner, Nelson, and Tedrick Cobb signs, but they took my upstate New York for Joe Biden signs. So I had 2. I'm now getting 4.
It's your friendly neighborhood fascist.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah.
Well, they're all about law and order, except for the laws they don't want to follow, apparently, about not getting on my property. At least they didn't steal my tomatoes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna close this down. Thank you all so much for being here. Head over to nelsonfornewyork.com where you can make a contribution. Every dollar does count. Sign up to Phone Bank. Sign up for a yard sign. Nobody can do this on their own. This is an absolutely winnable race, but it's only winnable if we all do it together.
Amen.
So, thank you all so much for
Thank
the
you.
opportunity, and have a wonderful evening.
You too. God bless.
You too.